Hello, everybody. My name is Dean. I am hailing in from the city of Orlando, Florida, and I'm so glad to be here to talk about the student-driven classroom. It is definitely something that I feel very, very strongly about, very passionate about. And just to sort of set things up, I'm going to be talking to you for about 15 minutes, and we'll allow you the opportunity to ask questions as well. Um, at the end of that,
just to sort of set things up, I'm going
at the end of that 15 minutes. And if you have any questions as we're going through, feel free to post them as well inside of the chat window, which should be visible on your screen right there on YouTube Live. And so again, my name is Dean Gainey from the city of beautiful Orlando, Florida. I am a grade 4 and 5 English language arts teacher. I also teach gifted students as well as a technology class. And I'm just so excited about what the student-driven classroom is all about. And I'd like to start off with a definition that I have tweaked and made it my own, because I practice and try to make my classroom student-driven at every available opportunity. So let me share with my screen for just a moment that contains a definition that I have constructed for the student-driven classroom. Okay, so if you could see my screen, you should be able to, let me give it a moment to pop up there. And so when I think about the student-driven classroom, I think about an environment where students are not learning because they are expected to learn, but they are understanding the value of that learning and that they are integral to that process. So again, when I think of the student-driven classroom, I think of one where students are in charge of that learning. They're owning it. And so they're not doing it because they are being forced to learn, but they are really invested in that learning process. And so that's a definition I've come by just in probably the last 2 or 3 years of teaching, as I've discovered more and more the importance of making sure that the students are vested and they are engaging in learning practices or learning processes that are meaningful and intentional. And so I think that's so important for us as educators to be focused on. I also wanted to sort of talk about my philosophy as it applies to teaching and learning. And this is, again, something I have derived that plays well into the idea of the student-driven classroom. And it's an acronym that I have come by, 6 letters forming the word CLIMB, as you see on the bottom of the screen there. And then also identifying what the 6 letters represent. You have cultivate, lead, inspire, motivate, build, as well as enrich and empower. And so I'm going to go in a little bit of detail about what I feel these are. And I'm also going to provide some practical ways or practical examples of things that have happened in my classroom or in the classroom where I teach, because really it has become so much the students' classroom. And they know it. You know, they come in and they are just ready. It's game on. You know, they know that the learning is going to take place. And that's how I want it to feel, because that's really what I feel a student-driven classroom is. It's one where they know that in this particular environment, this particular space, that's where learning is actually taking place. And so let's go into a little bit of detail here about the student-driven classroom. And so here's the first letter, cultivate. And so when I think of the word cultivate, it means to prepare. So I think about the farmers and those people who are really, really good at gardening. You know, cultivation has everything to do with making sure that the ground is where it needs to be or in a state that it needs to be in order to produce what needs to be produced. And so the soil has to be cultivated in order to make ready the ground so that things can be planted. And how many metaphors and just analogies are inside of that statement. We're planting students, we're grounding students in terms of giving them a foundation. We are also providing a framework for learning and letting them know that, hey, even when you don't do it all correctly, learning still has the opportunity to take place. So that's cultivation. And I think that it takes time to cultivate that. It takes time to prepare students that, hey, we're about to take off. Fasten your seatbelts. There's lots of learning that's going to happen here, and I want you to put you in the driver's seat. I want to put you in that position to pilot the aircraft. Also, I wanted to talk about the word lead, which is the L in CLIMB. It's to direct or to guide. And I feel that students need to take that lead and have opportunities to have that leadership developed in them. Just as a quick example of that, probably by a happy mistake, there's something that we do in our classroom daily in my ELA class, and it is sort of a chunked reading passage, and it really is an opportunity for students to sort of see reading in a small, concise form and have opportunities to not only practice reading comprehension, but it also gives them an opportunity to discuss and to talk about it and to disagree. I have opened the floor for disagreement, and I want them to be able to express themselves. I want them to be able to explain to their peers and to me why they disagree with something, and to be able to validate their responses. I always say, prove it. You know, they say something, and my first words are prove it, because I want them to have that ability and that wherewithal to explain themselves and to use the text as a means to an end. And even when they disagree with other students, knowing how to do that too. And so that has become an everyday thing in our classroom, and so much so now that, you know, I don't go through that warm up with them. I'm there, I'm facilitating, but it is now student driven. The students are in charge of going through that and guiding that process, and even identifying and recognizing other students' responses and affirming them. And it's just such an awesome experience to see how you can provide that space and opportunity for them to be driven. Also, teaching for life. I think that's important. Like when I teach, I don't teach for the school year. And I tell the kids that all the time. It's not just for now. What I'm teaching you is for life. It is something that I want you to be concerned with for life. How does this connect to life? I think it's very important to connect those dots for kids. The next is inspire. Inspire is the I. To light a flame is what I call it. And it's not just about the teach, but it's about the reach. And so identifying ways in which you can get to the students, not expecting them to come to you, but finding ways to get to them, to reach them in a way that they can understand and that they can embrace and that they can relate to, so that it creates that further meaning for them. Now I have a light bulb visual there, but the same idea, right? When you light that flame, it creates a light. It guides. It creates that opportunity to see what maybe has not been seen before. So I think inspiration is so important, even as a teacher. Like there's my inspiration as well. What inspires me to be a teacher? I think about it all the time. And so when I knew that somebody else was the result of my inspiration to teach, so I try to instill inspiration into my students as a result of that. And I think that they're looking to us as the educators to be that inspiration to them in whatever the form. I have to mention this because I've done a lot of things. I've been an actor. I'm a singer as well. I also have been in the military. And so I have those different kinds of things. I've written, authoring books as well. And I think when you can speak to the students from various lenses, it also helps to light that flame and inspire them. So intentionally looking for ways to reach kids, to me, is so valuable. The M, motivate, which is to me build capacity. Like this is why this is important. This is so much fun, or I really, really love this, or this might be really fun for you to invest your time in. And so getting students to understand that it can be exciting, it can be thrilling, it can be enthralling, it can be one of those things where you don't necessarily know what's going to happen, but I'm so excited about the opportunity. And I always say 75% of my job is motivation, because once I can motivate them, once I can get them to see that there's so much in it for them, I think the rest of it is easy, right? The rest of it is easy. Now it's just about them coming up and doing it and getting involved. And so motivation is definitely key. So that's the M, motivate. The B, construct or shaping as a part of the building process. And so you can see on the screen that these are all important. So it's kind of hard to look at one and not the other ones. But learning from everything, even if it's an error, even if it's a mistake, is so important because you're trying to build character, you're trying to build that innate nature while you're building knowledge. Hopefully to arrive at self-actualization. Who am I as self-regulation, being able to sort of guide yourself through life independently. Building culture and community as well in the classroom is so important. I talked about it a little bit with the Reading Daily Warm-Up. We also have something else called Power of Quotes, which I will get to in just a moment. And I know my time is ticking really fast, so I have 5 more minutes, but we'll get through it. Culture and community is just, it's so incredible to walk to the classroom and just feel that it's a place where learning is taking place. How do you build that? How do you build it? And I think it has to be an intentional process. It has to be a place where the kids know that when they walk in, learning, this is a place of learning. It has to be a place where even you as the teacher understands that I want to feel like learning is taking place in this place, in this space. So it's partly what's up on the walls. It's partly your excitement and motivation. It's partly how do you engage the students, considering those two things, as well as how interesting is learning to you. So I love to learn as a teacher. And so by so doing, I'm always excited about different things I find when we read or when we talk, or things that I hear from the kids when they're discussing. And I capitalize on those moments to express and to share in the excitement and the enthusiasm. And it creates that culture of, yes, everybody gets to say something. Everybody has something valuable to say. Everybody should be listened to. And I practice that too. And so by listening to my students, even when they talk, they understand how important it is to listen, because I use myself as an example. And so that carries over to them being listeners to each other. And it's just so inspiring, even as a teacher, to continue to move in that vein when I know that you're making gains. I know that things are happening. I know the kids are learning, and they're learning in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. And so that's the last thing, they're learning from everything. The E, enrich and empower. You'll notice there on the right-hand side, knowledge consumers on the left, bottom left. We have knowledge consumers on the, let's see if I can do this. Knowledge consumers there, and then we have knowledge seekers, and then finally knowledge creators. And ultimately, we want to be creating, we want to instill in kids the ability to create knowledge, because it's one thing to consume it, to sit and get. It's another thing to go after it, to seek it and find it, but it's another thing to create it. And so giving them the opportunity to take the lead, learn outside of the walls, even in instilling global learning and the ability to learn from other people in other countries and other states and other cultures, and bringing in the whole diversity and community components, it really gives them the power to understand that learning is a lifelong thing. It's a process. It's a lifestyle. And I think that's so important to say, okay, well, we've learned a lot this year, but there's so much more to be learned. And so these are some practical ideas. Power of Quotes has really taken off in my class. We started out with R.J. Palacio's 365 Days of Wonder, and talking about a quote every day, giving the students an opportunity to discuss them. And it was me sort of facilitating that at the beginning of the year. But that really turned into, okay, the students taking the lead. They asked, they showed that initiative. Can I take over? Can I be in charge of leading the quote discussions? And it has become such a big thing that I have a leader in every classroom now. Not only that, we're talking about quotes. They're searching and identifying quotes in their own reading, and they are creating quotes. We now have a Power of Quotes wall in the classroom of student-created quotes that have really transformed learning. I mean, transformed learning in the classroom. It has really blown my mind. And so that's one great way. Start with a quote. Reading activities on the daily, that's what I was talking about earlier. Student Ed Camp is a great way to get students up and talking, up and sharing things that they might not normally share. It's a great way to get those students that would normally be quiet in the classroom to actually talk a little bit more about what they're doing. And last year was my first time, and it was absolutely mind-blowing how awesome they dove in. They were focused, no behavior problems. It was such an interesting day. Genie's Hour, student podcasting, and that's just an excellent way to get students talking and talking about student voice and let them talk about what they feel strongly about, their passions. Integrating Twitter and thinking about how to share what they're doing in the classroom with people on Twitter. I have a class Twitter account, so with authors and that sort of thing, since I teach ELA, it has really been a transformative tool. And then other student-generated opportunities as well. And just some quick pictures before I come to a close and stop for questions, is that here are a few quotes that I pulled from R.J. Palacio's book that we've talked about in the classroom. It is better to be in the dark with a friend than to be in the light without one. And invite others to wonder with you. And then rise above the little things. And just incredible responses from the kids. Here's some Genius Hour photos and that's a little video over there, but I won't play it for the sake of time. Just kids being up and talking and interacting has been such a positive experience.
It's morning and I learned it in camp.
Okay, I won't let that play the whole time, but. And then lastly, Student Ed Camp. There's some pictures from that. The top right-hand photo was yoga. The left photo was teaching guitar. And then the bottom right photo was American Sign Language, which the students wanted to share that particular talent as well with their students or peers. So it has been really a phenomenal experience. It has been a phenomenal experience with regards to the student-driven classroom. It really has transformed the whole teaching and learning process. I cannot begin to tell you how awesome it has been and continues to be transformed to see, just to see how the students really embrace learning for themselves. I think it's something I will never get tired of seeing. And so I'm going to stop there and pause for questions. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I will scroll and see. And I'm so sorry, you guys were posting messages and I didn't even see them because I was so engrossed in talking. But let's see. Jennifer Casataz, Sarah Thomas, I see you. Kathy Wolf, Steven, Sakor, welcome. Justin, yes, he did. He wrote that blog. Thank you, Jennifer, for talking about that. Love the sketch note. Thank you, Kathy Wolf. Yes. Motivation is easy indeed. Seeing the snap. I'm singing the Snap song in my mind. I've got the power. Yes. All right. So, Karina, you asked a little bit about the student ed camps. Okay. So, with regards to student ed camps, I tried to start out with the whole idea of how we do ed camps as teachers. And so it started out with, okay, what are some things that you all want to learn more about? What are some things that you're really, really good at, that you know a lot about, maybe that you want to share, that are even above and beyond the normal curriculum? That's where we started. And we generated a list of things, either things I want to learn or things I want to share and I'm really, really good at. And I used Google Forms to set all of that up. And I shared the links with the students via digital portfolio access. And all of them added their information, their thoughts to that Google form. And from there, we voted on the most favorite. So I said, maybe pick your top 5 or pick your top 10 even of these topics. And so we narrowed down. And from there, I think whatever we narrowed down to was what we actually used in that particular class period. I did it in 3 different class periods. I had 3 sessions or 3 blocks of time. And then there were 4 activities happening during each block. So I had 2 outside, 2 inside, with the classroom divided into 2. And it was an opportunity for them to sort of move from one session to the next. And the rules were all the same. And it was an incredible day of learning. And that's kind of how it happened. I even incorporated a logo contest where they created a logo or badge to represent Student Ed Camp. And it just really took off. And the blocks were, let's see, I'm a 90-minute class, so the blocks were 30 minutes apiece, or maybe 25 to 30. depending on when we got started, Kathy Wolf. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the for the compliment, and Kathy, I saw you as well. Let's see, a little sounds like a great plan. Absolutely. Any other questions that you might have before I sign off? I'm certainly willing to share more about the Student Ed Camp should you desire more information. It was a complete success. They were ready to do another one probably the next day, and they were already asking. So it was just incredible. But please hit me up on Twitter if you want, and I can share more information about that, or you can email me. Absolutely no problem. Are there any other questions I can answer about the student-driven classroom? This has been an exciting time, and I'm so glad that you all stopped in to share. Lots of Mad PD happening today, all day long, 8 to 8. So if there are no other questions, I am going to go ahead and sign off. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm so excited that maybe as a result of hearing about the student-driven classroom, there are some things that you feel inspired to do that maybe you hadn't had opportunity to try before, and that's what it's all about. Constantly learning and constantly becoming better. And so thank you. And that being said, have a great, great day. And thanks again for stopping by. And I'll see you soon.